Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to r/EntitledPeople, where people truly believe that they're the center of the universe and nobody else matters. And in today's episode, a smug Karen throws a huge tantrum because she doesn't get what she wants, and oh boy, it proves to be the worst mistake of her life. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's lineup. Hit subscribe if you're not subscribed, and as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. Okay, so do I have a crazy story for you? First off, my grandmother is the entitled one in the story. She always gets her way, always does what she wants. I'm not in contact with her anymore because of a bunch of stuff she's done. The woman is extremely manipulative and narcissistic, not to mention sneaky. She'll twist your brain around so much that you start believing things that aren't true. Growing up, she wanted us to hate our mom and be emotionally dependent on her. Just trust me, she's bad news. Anyways, she'll also do grand gestures to make you like her, and to cover up other stuff she's done. When I was 17 years old, I graduated high school, and she took me on a trip to Hawaii to celebrate. It was honestly really fun, and we stayed at her sister's house who lives in Hawaii. One day, my great aunt invites her nephew and his fiance for dinner. I had never met them before, and I was really anxious. So to combat this, my grandma forces me to drink wine and coolers. I told her I'm not supposed to drink, but she sat there and basically forced me to have 3 drinks. Now, another thing about me is I'm not a healthy person, and at the time, I was on 4 or 5 different types of medication that shouldn't mix with alcohol. But of course, Grandma didn't care. The mix of the meds and the alcohol made me start talking weird words that didn't make sense, and then I ended up passing out and face planting into my spaghetti. Naturally, my grandma, being drunk out of her mind, thought I was dead, and she did the most logical thing. The woman calmly drags me up the stairs, half conscious, unable to control my limbs, and she stuck me in bed. Then she went downstairs and she drank a crap ton more wine, all the while trying to figure out how to tell my mom I died without making my mom hate her. The next morning, I woke up with spaghetti sauce all on my face, and she had the nerve to say, "Oh, thank goodness you're still alive. Why did you drink so much? I still hadn't figured out how to tell your mom you died. I was really worried." She said that like she was guilting me or something. I'm 24 now, and I suddenly remembered it the other day, and I'm boggled and had to share this with you. If you think your grandkid is dying, why wouldn't you call the ambulance or something? Or at least stay nearby to make sure the kid is still breathing. Yeah, I can answer that, OP. It's because Grandma had a little bit too much fun juice that night, and she was clearly wasted. And honestly, it really has me thinking, if Grandma's like that with OP, I can only imagine what she was like raising her own children. Like OP said, mind-boggling, right? The woman knew she was on medication, and she still made her, a minor, drink alcohol. So many things could have gone wrong that night. I'm just glad OP is okay. And also, I can see why OP's no longer in contact with her. So this is a bit of an old story. It happened years ago. I'll address one thing to start. I use a wheelchair and I'm legally blind. Another thing about me is I love concerts. I live in a big city and I go to basically any concert I can afford. This particular concert was a few local bands at a small venue, and I arrived early. I've been to the venue before, and they have a section near the front that they rope off. It's definitely not a large section. It could fit 2 wheelchairs maximum. At this particular concert, I was the only person there in a wheelchair. Now, personally, I don't care about having a good view of the stage for obvious reasons. However, what I do care about is safety, which is a lot easier to manage when there's a specific area designated for wheelchair users. If anyone can start coming in, it gets overcrowded, which compromises safety. I also attend concerts with an aide, or occasionally friends and family. This one was with an aide. So here I am at the concert, having fun and enjoying myself. There is a short intermission, and my aide excuses herself to use the bathroom. I was just chilling in the special area. And this is where Karen comes in. And honestly, I can't say I've ever seen a mother-daughter pairing at a concert before. But then again, I don't see very much these days. I'll do my best to recreate the conversation, but some of it is paraphrased since it's been a while. So Karen basically marches up and says, "Why is this area roped off?" I begin to tell her it's for people who are disabled. And that's when Karen interrupts me and she lays into me. She says, "I was watching you the whole time. You weren't even watching the stage. Why leave less room for all of us when you're not even watching the show? My daughter can barely see the stage. How's that fair? I tell her I'm blind, I just enjoy the music. Karen then says, if you're blind, where's your stick? Hearing that, I'm baffled, and I say, what? She then repeats herself and says, if you're blind, where's your white stick? That's when I explain and say, ma'am, I don't have a stick. I'm in a wheelchair, and I have an aide who helps me around. And ma'am, having a cane doesn't exactly help me with mobility and orientation. Karen, of course, starts arguing and she says, so you're telling me that you're blind? If you even are blind, why do you need to be at the front? My daughter and I can barely see the stage. It's unfair. Now again, I want to note that I don't need to be at the front. That's just where they put me. It's out of my hands. I try to explain to her again, but that's when she says, Sarah, go on and move the rope. You can get a better view there. Stand beside her. At this point, thankfully my aide returned, just as the daughter was trying to go under the rope to presumably get a better view. My aide says, what's going on? Karen tells her, my daughter needs a better view of the stage, so she will stand right here. My aide tells her, this area is for wheelchair users. She can't. At this point, Karen starts screaming at my aide how she's in the section and she's probably pretending to help me out so she can get a close-up of the bands. And also, when I say she's screaming, I mean she's very excessively loud. Loud enough that security comes over to make sure everything was okay. Of course, in the end, the woman and daughter were both asked to leave, as Karen starts yelling at security too. So yeah, justice was served. Man, it is always surprising how Karens never ever think of the consequences of their actions, right? Like, good job, Karen. Now your daughter won't get to be there to see the rest of the show, all because you couldn't keep your mouth shut and decided to harass a blind person in a wheelchair, which makes you a horrible person. And seriously, I think we can all agree that it's much better to be at the show and be a bit further back than to not be there at all. Again, how some people fail to see that, I have no idea. Alright, so my son rides the bus with a very entitled, very unruly girl that lies about everything and bullies people. The bus driver has my son where he can see him to prevent it on the bus. Her mom is just as bad. We also live in a rural area, so the bus stops are spread out. Emily, as I'll call the girl, lives just far off that her mom drives her to the bus stop. So on with the nonsense. On this day, we're down at the bus stop in my car because it's raining. Normally, we walk to the stop, but who wants to go to school soaking wet, right? We're just passing time, playing I Spy and playing games on my phone. And here comes entitled Karen. The woman comes to the bus stop and spots my car. She then lets her daughter out, and the daughter beelines to my car and tries to open it. The doors are locked. She then runs back to mom's car and she loudly complains that she can't get in. Meanwhile, I'm shocked. I'm thinking I'm not letting her in either. And this is when Karen gets out of her car and she walks up to me and says, "So, you need to let my daughter in. It's raining." To which I say, "No, I don't." She then says, "Some people have things to do. We can't sit around all day like you." My response to that was, "Some people have jobs, but we still make sure our kids get on the bus safely. Go away." It's at this point she tries reaching through the cracked window and she screams, "Open this door right now. It's raining so hard. My daughter wants to sit in your car. I have an appointment to get to. I can't wait here." I just calmly say, "Nope, not my kid, not my problem. Just get inside your car and wait. The bus will be here soon." At this point, I start closing the window and she jerks her hand back. And no, she did not get in her car, but she decides to start hitting my car. The whole time, screaming about her self-importance and me needing to understand that her daughter's always right. And no, I did not call the police because there was no need. The third kid at our stop is a sheriff's officer's son. We have a deal. I watch his son in the morning and he gets mine home safe in the afternoon. He pulls up to Karen, just beating my car window. Of course, he screams, "Hey, stop that. Why are you hitting her car window like that? It's raining. Go sit in yours." And this is when I unlock the doors for his son to get inside. And Karen screams and says, "You see that? She won't let my daughter in, but your son didn't even ask. And she let him go in her car. She's being so rude." The officer tells her, "Ma'am, you're responsible for your child, not her. She can decline access to her car if she wants to, and clearly she is, so get inside your car or I'm calling my sergeant to authorize an impound, because you will go to jail for attempted destruction of her car and harassment. That's when Karen just sulked back to her car and the bus pulls up. I just took my big umbrella out and got the boys on the bus. And the funny thing is, Karen drove off before the bus closed the stop sign. So the officer of course stopped her for that violation and gave her a ticket. I just went home chuckling. Oh boy, Karen getting a ticket was the cherry on top, wasn't it? And seriously, I don't understand how some people can be so rude to others and still expect to be catered to. Like, did she really think that banging on OP's car window long enough that OP would just be like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, you can let your daughter sit in my car now"? With that said though, like, how some people are so willing to force their children on random strangers baffles me. Like, how did Karen know that OP wasn't in a kidnappy mood that day and would have just taken off with her child, never to be seen again? And this person comments, as an ex-bus driver, hell yeah to her getting a ticket. She knew he was there and she still chose to think that she was more important than waiting an extra 30 seconds for the bus to move on. So this just happened to my cousin, and it's still a bit of an ongoing situation, but it's too crazy to not post. Here's some background. So my cousin, who we'll call Kat, received a beautiful promise ring from her boyfriend at the time. It had a real pearl in the center that was surrounded by mini diamonds, essentially close to the quality of an engagement ring. Now I can't remember the exact cost, but I want to say he paid at least $500 to $600 for it, as it was treated like a long-term engagement. Obviously, between the price and the sentiment behind it, that ring meant everything to Kat. And not one time in their relationship did I ever see her not wear it. With that said, the ring has even more meaning to it now, as the couple separated a few months ago due to personal issues on his side. But he told her to keep the ring on as a promise that he would return one day when everything's sorted. Now that that's out of the way, here's where the entitled mom, the Karen, comes in. So a bit about Kat's mom is she's a total leech of a woman who thinks everyone will bow down to her will. The woman refuses to work and she essentially lives off handouts from her family, but also demands to live a luxurious lifestyle. She's the type of woman who will beg for money to buy food and then turn around and waste it at the casino. She'll do whatever she can to get money, and she's recently resorted to guilt tripping and stealing. It was another cousin's birthday a few days ago, and everybody came over for a pool party. Kat had taken off her ring and she had left it on my dresser so she could go swimming, only to come back to find it missing. And let me tell you, we tore the whole room apart looking for it, just in case it had fallen or maybe someone knocked it grabbing their clothes. But the ring was nowhere to be found. Kat was heartbroken and she wouldn't stop crying over the ring. She was blaming herself for letting it get out of her sight. At the time, we still thought it was lost, so I assured her it would turn up. Fast forward to today, and Kat's mom calls my mom and asked if she wants to go out, saying she just got a nice payout, so it's her treat. Now, this obviously made no sense to my mom, since my aunt doesn't work, so naturally, my mom questioned where she suddenly got all the money. To which she replied she did a little spring cleaning. Don't you worry about it. Well, it turns out that Karen saw Kat's ring on the dresser at the party, and she took it and then pawned it for not even half the price it's worth, just so she could have the money to go out and party. I wasn't there when Kat found out, but apparently, the events that occurred went as followed. When Kat angrily confronts her mom about why she took the ring, she just blew it off and she kept making excuses. She kept saying that she needed the money because she's so broke, and that she deserved to have the ring since Kat had no use for it anymore now that she was single. Karen also argued that Kat was a child who doesn't deserve expensive items when she can't appreciate them, and that her mother's happiness should mean more to her than some dumb ring. She also got defensive and she calls Kat an ungrateful brat when she begged her to go buy the ring back. At some point during Karen's stupid rant, Kat left and she came to spend the night with us so she could calm down and figure everything out. Kat has spent the whole evening trying to get a hold of the pawn shop to see if she could get her ring back. And Aunt Karen's messaging both me and my mom, arguing that she did nothing wrong. and that Kat's making a big deal out of nothing. My mom and I refuse to talk to her until she not only apologizes, but also tries to get the ring back. It's bad enough stealing and selling your child's things, but the sentiment that ring holds will never be replaceable if she can't get it back. Listen guys, nothing makes me angrier than when parents take their children's belongings and pawn it for money so they can buy things they want. And the fact that Kat's mom even argued that she didn't need it because now she's single, and that mom's happiness should always trump hers, makes me even more upset. Like, what an a-hole move. And seriously, if I were in Kat's shoes, I'd be waiting for mom to leave the house and then pawn all of her stuff. See how she likes it. But with that said, OP does come back with an update that says, it took almost 2 days for Kat to get a confirmation that the pawn shop had the ring, and she explained what happened to see if she could get it back. They told her that if she could bring them proof that she was the original owner of the ring, they would be able to give it back to her and they could hold it until then. Obviously, this was a bit tricky since the ring was a gift, so Kat's ex-boyfriend ends up getting involved. She called him and explained what happened while asking if he kept a receipt for the ring, and he was happy to help. He ends up going down to the pawn shop with the documentation to prove it's his, and he got it back for her. Kat had also been against filing a police report at first, since she was relieved to have the ring back, and she was scared of her mom's reaction, but he convinced her to do it. Not only does her ex hate her mom, but he was beyond pissed that she would go after something so valuable. It turns out the original price of the ring was just below $800, and she sold it for not even $300. It also turns out that where we live, all pawned items are supposed to be uploaded to a database with serial numbers, so the police department can more easily track stolen or illegal goods. The text messages and calls from Karen to us during this time also serve as proof that she knew the ring was stolen, so she can't lie her way out of it. Also, because the ring was valued at over $500, Karen will be looking at up to 18 months in prison and a $5,000 fine just for stealing the ring. And possibly even more, as she's now taken and used all the funds given to her from when she pawned the ring, so she could potentially be charged by the shop as well. For the first few days, Karen tried to argue her case to anyone that would listen, but eventually she gave up and went back to spoiling herself. Apparently, she truly believed that she had done nothing wrong, and that Kat would eventually get over it and go back home. I'm not sure what she did with the money, but she had maybe $50 left, and she said she would use it to buy Kat a replacement ring because she's feeling generous and wants to keep the peace. Needless to say, she wasn't feeling so generous when she found out about the report. She threw a massive tantrum and she tried to guilt-trip Kat into dropping it because, quote, she couldn't do that to her poor mother. And also, how dare you call the cops on your own mom? On top of the jail time, there's no way that she'll be able to afford the fine given, as she lives off of handouts, so she's in a lot of trouble. She's been crying to the rest of the family for sympathy, and sadly enough, most of them are enablers and they took her side. Kat's phone has been blowing up with messages from family, calling her selfish and an awful daughter for putting mom in this situation because she's already struggling. She just ended up blocking them and she's trying to relax after a very stressful week. And then she's gonna look for apartments so she can move out and finally cut ties with her mom. It's been messy for everyone, but I'm glad she got her ring back and her mom's finally getting what she deserves. What a wild ride that was. And again, people never ever think of consequences because not only is she looking at jail time and fines for what she did, but because of what she did, Kat's family basically hates her. And really, if they're taking mom's side in all of this, does Kat really want those people in her life? I don't think so. So, a need-to-know detail for this story is it was effing hot. It was about 35 degrees Celsius, about 95 Fahrenheit, but it felt even hotter. This is important for later. I was standing in line at the checkout at the local supermarket. I think in total, I had about 10 items: frozen goods, drinks, and snacks. At this time, the woman at the cash register was taking care of the payment of one client, and there was one person in front of me, and then she suddenly appears, the Karen in the story. Now honestly, she didn't look like it. She didn't give off a mean vibe or anything. Even the way she starts talking to me was overall nice and polite, at first. The woman says to me, "Excuse me, do you mind if I skip ahead? I'm in a hurry." Now, in general, if somebody politely asks me this and I don't have urgent business of my own, I usually don't mind. This time, however, I didn't have that many groceries, so her delay would at most be a few minutes. Meanwhile, she was pushing a fully loaded shopping cart in front of her. So if I let her skip, I'd probably be in the store for another 10 to 20 minutes. I politely decline, and I tell her I will hurry as much as I can. Of course, this was a great offense. I had not given this woman her entitlement, and she blows up instantly. The woman starts yelling and screaming at me that she was in a hurry, and I'm not even kidding here. She said she had to be home in time for her show. Now, at this time, I would also like to point out that during this rant, she only said she had to be home in time for shows and that they were very important to her. There was nothing else making this urgent for her. This is important a bit later. Now, while the woman was going off, the person at the cash register just goes into ignore mode and starts scanning my groceries, which I loaded into a bag while Karen kept going on about how I was garbage and that they should ban me from the store. Now this should have been the end of it, right? Just turn around and go home and forget this happened. But then she said something that 1, made me almost want to kill her, and 2, made this a postable story. So while I'm walking away, just about to put an earbud back in, she yells, "If you pass by my car, tell my son you're the reason he has to wait another half hour for me, idiot." Now, I'm not an extremely smart person, but in this moment, my brain made some connections quickly. What I realized was this. Number 1, again, it was very, very hot outside. Number 2, this woman had been in the store for a while, judging by the amount of groceries. Number 3, the entire parking lot of the store had almost no shade. And number 4, it was about 2 p.m., so the sun was just over its peak. I just rush outside and I start running past cars, scanning them for kids inside. Thankfully, one of the first cars I pass has a small child laying in the back seat. The kid is as pale as a ghost and he's sweating like crazy. It looked like he was only half conscious. That's when I run back inside, and to my utter astonishment, this bitch is having a conversation with the cashier. I just grab her by the shoulders, spin her around, and yell almost straight to her face that her kid is literally dying in her car. And if she doesn't do something right now, I'm smashing the car windows and calling the cops. At first, the woman looked at me in complete confusion, probably never been spoken to like that before in her life. And then, the realization of what I told her sunk in and she rushes outside. While she went, a man taps me on the shoulder and asks me what happened. I explained the situation, leaving out the bit at the cash register, just saying that I saw the kid in the car and I knew this woman was probably the owner. He and I went outside, and that's when Karen suddenly rushes me and she gets into my face, saying I was the reason that she was in the store so long, and her son's current condition was my fault. Before I can even respond, the man speaks up. It turns out this man was an off-duty cop that had been in the store for a while, and as such, he knew that the actual delay caused by me could not have caused this. He also said he called an ambulance for the kid and the cops for her. Now, I don't know what happened to the woman, but she completely crashed. She just sat down on the pavement and she starts shaking her head, not saying much, except the occasional sob or "it's not my fault this happened." As for the ending, everything turned out okay for most parties. I stayed a while to give my statement to the cops and my contact info, just in case it went to court. The kid was okay afterwards, and since his mom got arrested, they called his dad to accompany him to the hospital. As for the mom, I'm assuming she's gonna have to stand trial for child endangerment. I'm not sure if she'll get a fine or jail time. I just gotta say that OP was definitely in the right place at the right time, because even just a few more minutes, that poor helpless child might have suffered even worse consequences. And guys, what's insane about this is she refused to accept fault. Like, she literally tried to blame OP and everyone else for the condition her child was in. Effing baffling, right? Like, take that child away from her, holy moly. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of r/entitled people. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy, crazy stories. And if you missed yesterday's episode on the channel, it's an r/malicious compliance, where students are teaching teachers a lesson they won't forget. Guys, go check it out if you haven't. And myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.